let's kick off part 2 with one of the most unlucky franchises of all time, the Portland Trail Blazers. Things started off great at first for the Blazers. They won the title in just their 7th season into existence as a franchise. But going forward, they experienced a whole lot of misfortune. Let's talk about the 1984 NBA draft. Now, believe it or not, their streak of bad luck actually began before the actual draft. This was before the advent of the draft lottery. So Portland and Houston were involved in a coin toss for the #1 pick in that draft. Portland got to make the call and went with tails, but the coin came up heads. Remember, the ultimate prize at the time wasn't Michael Jordan, it was actually Hakeem. Portland was just a coin toss away from who they really wanted, but was forced to settle for who they thought was the next best big man in the draft, Sam Bowie, which, as we all know, turned out to be a monumental mistake. Now, Bowie actually had a pretty respectable rookie season, but the following year, he broke his left leg after getting tangled up with teammate Jerome Kersey, coming down from a rebound. Then, the year after that, he broke his other leg, a compound fracture to be exact. Sounds familiar, right?
Nurk is down and he is in considerable pain and he has a serious injury.
Now back to Bowie, those multiple leg injuries would go on to derail his career. Well, at least when it came to being a trailblazer, and he ultimately became the butt of every Blazers joke. In the 2006 draft, the Blazers actually did pretty well for themselves, walking away with Brandon Roy and LaMarcus Aldridge. But in 2007, the Blazers would make yet another colossal mistake, one that would be seen almost as bad as the one they made in 1984. Portland had the privilege of picking first this time, and decided to select 7-foot big man Greg Oden. But he immediately ran into some problems, having to undergo microfracture surgery of the knee just a couple months after getting drafted, and missed his entire rookie season as a result. In fact, he only ended up playing a total of 82 games for them, which in a way made him the next Sam Bowie in many people's eyes. And what sucks is, the trio of Roy, Aldridge, and Oden played in just 62 games together. Their record during that sample size? 52-10, which just shows the potential they could have had. Speaking of Brandon Roy, he already had 3 All-Star appearances under his belt in just 4 seasons into his career. It looked like he was well on his way to being one of the best players in the league. However, he was forced to retire early due to a degenerative knee condition. Now guys, it's not just the fact that Oden and Bowie got injured, it's also about who they could have had. Michael Jordan, who many call the greatest player of all time, and Kevin Durant, who is arguably a top 15 player of all time. Even if Portland already had Drexler, they should have drafted for talent and not need. They also had the opportunity to take Barkley or Stockton or whoever. Anything would have been better than how things turned out. It always bothers me when people try to make a case that Oden and Bowie are not busts. They just fell victim to injuries. I mean, yeah, I get it. Nobody is saying they were never good. It's just when you think about the players they passed up on, that's when it becomes heartbreaking. Heck, even though Bill Walton's Blazer tenure was cut short due to injury, at least he still won a championship and an MVP with the Blazers. Things that Oden and Bowie unfortunately never got a chance to do. Okay, let's quickly go through some other Blazer honorable mentions, if you even want to call it that. We got the time they lost 2 NBA finals in the span of just 3 years, one coming at the hands of the guy they passed up on. You got the epic collapse they suffered in the 2000 Western Conference Finals. You got the infamous Jailblazers era, the fact that Clyde Drexler as well as Rasheed Wallace immediately went on to win the championship as soon as the Blazers traded them away, Arvydas Sabonis not being able to immediately play with the Blazers in his prime, and we can even throw in the fact that they didn't quite know what they had when they foolishly gave away Moses Malone in 1976. All these examples should easily prove why the Portland Trail Blazers are probably cursed. When reading up on the history of the Orlando Magic, they might give Portland a run for their money. When you think about it, the Magic, along with their fans, unfortunately had to watch two of their #1 picks walk out on them for the same team, the LA Lakers, while they were close to or in their prime. As we all know, Shaquille O'Neal went on to win multiple championships with the Lakers, and Dwight Howard won one too, although it was during his second stint with the Lakers, which ironically took place in Orlando. That's where the NBA bubble happened to be. They nearly landed another big man in Tim Duncan back in 2000, but you can thank Doc Rivers for screwing that one up. Now, this aspect of the Magic's bad luck is pretty interesting. It has to do with when you compare them to the other team that resides in the state of Florida, the Miami Heat. The Heat came into existence only 1 year before the Magic did, but has essentially ran circles around the Magic as a franchise in terms of success. Miami won their first championship in 2006. The starting center on that team? None other than Shaquille O'Neal, which had to have been tough to watch for Magic fans. Orlando did make an appearance in the 2009 finals, and despite losing in 5 games, it looked like it was their time to shine for a little bit. But a year later, the Heat managed to get LeBron James and Chris Bosh to team up with Wade, in part due to Miami being a more desirable location. And just like that, Orlando had to take a back seat once again when it came to relevancy in their state, as Miami would go on to make 4 straight NBA finals, winning 2 of them. Now, this may be just adding insult to injury, but remember when the Magic's Aaron Gordon went up against the Heat's Derrick Jones Jr. in the 2020 Slam Dunk Contest? The battle of the 2 Florida teams. And as many fans believe, Gordon got robbed.
What are we doing, man? Who set the dunk contest up, man? Who set this up? I don't even know who gave me the 9s. I'm gonna find them. Trust, I'm gonna find them. I'm gonna find them tonight. Cause I feel like I should have 2 trophies. You know what I mean? So it's over for that.
And the culprit looks to have been none other than a Miami Heat legend, Dwayne Wade. How fitting is that? Miami just keeps coming out on top in this one-sided rivalry. They even went to the finals that year in the bubble as well, smack dab on Orlando territory. They also played one time in the playoffs all the way back in 1997, where, you guessed it, Miami won. And of course, we can't forget about injuries. I kinda already touched on Tracy McGrady and Grant Hill in part 1, so let's talk about Penny Hardaway. Hardaway was well on his way to maybe being one of the best ever, but ever since that devastating knee injury in 1997, he was never the same, as he always seemed to be battling knee issues. And to make matters even worse, his once partner in crime would go on to create one of the greatest duos in NBA history with a guy in Kobe Bryant that should have been him. Man, I'm starting to think that there might be something supernatural going on with the Magic.
Inside position, he couldn't handle it, but the Rockets had handled 12 of 15 at the line. Team anyway, they were going to do it by committee, and another miss by Nick Anderson. Well, that's in effect, I believe, yes. And he misses 4 straight. Nick Anderson knowing that if he had just made one of those, it would have given the Magic a hammerlock on this game.
When a player first comes into the league, obviously their goal is to eventually accumulate some success. But when it came to Derrick Rose, he was able to do so in pretty much no time. In 2011, which was only his 3rd year, he became the youngest MVP ever at just 22 years old. Kobe and LeBron both had better scoring seasons than Rose, but with Chicago putting together an impressive 62-win season, the edge had to go to Rose. That was the Bulls' best season since the Michael Jordan-led Bulls' 97-98 season. Heading into the 2011 NBA playoffs, it was believed to be a foregone conclusion that the Bulls would wind up having to face the Miami Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals, and that's exactly what ended up happening. But despite having home court advantage, they lost to the Heat in just 5 games. It was clear that Rose couldn't do it alone. Heading into the next season, the Bulls were hungry to get revenge on Miami, and when Chicago wound up the #1 seed in the East again, people thought that another Bulls versus Heat matchup in the conference finals was pretty much a guarantee. But the journey that it took to get the #1 seed again was filled with bumpy roads. Derrick Rose in particular kept running into minor injuries. A sprained toe, a groin injury, lower back pain, ankle and foot problems were all issues that he faced before the 2012 playoffs, causing him to miss a significant amount of games that season. And as we all know, he couldn't overcome the one he suffered on April 28, 2012. His career would change forever on this day. The Chicago Bulls went up against the Philadelphia 76ers in the first round, a 1 versus 8 matchup. With just a little over a minute left in the game, Chicago up by 12, Rose would injure his left knee while driving to the basket. An MRI would later reveal that he tore his ACL. For some reason, Rose was still in the game even though they clearly had the game in the bag. Okay, I know that's not the biggest lead in the world for today's standards, but man, look what it cost them, as Rose would obviously miss the rest of those playoffs. And not just that, he would also go on to miss the entire 2012-2013 season as well. Fans couldn't wait to see Rose make a return, which he finally did on October 29th, 2013, in a game versus the defending champs Miami Heat. Well, this was his first official game back that actually counted. People were extremely happy to just finally see him back on the court again, even if he only scored 12 points in a losing effort. 2 days later, he played in his first official home game since returning versus the New York Knicks, where he would hit a game-winning floater. And it was around this time when he would say, "I think I'm way more explosive now, like getting to the rim. I think I can take contact a little bit better. And as far as jumping wise, I think I can jump even higher. They tested my vertical. I increased it by 5 inches. But little did he know, that statement wouldn't age very well. In just his 11th game back versus the Portland Trail Blazers on November 22nd, 2013, he would tear his right meniscus, which led to him being out for the season as a result. He literally just returned not too long before that. And then, just like that, he was sidelined once again, as another huge chunk of his career went straight down the toilet. By this time, the cat was out of the bag. Rose was obviously injury prone. It got to the point where fans could only worry while watching him play. As expected, he was ready to go for the 2014-15 season, but in February of 2015, he would again suffer another right knee injury, tearing the same meniscus he just did about a year prior. He would go on to miss 20 more games, but did return just in time for the playoffs, where he eventually did this.
Finds Rose. Rose trying to get open, fires away. Bang! It's over! The Bulls win at the buzzer!
Right before the 2015-16 season, Rose would fracture his left orbital bone in a preseason game, forcing him to have to wear a mask for a period of time. And this would be his last season with Chicago. He was traded to the New York Knicks in the summer of 2016. The Knicks had just drafted Kristaps Porzingis the year prior, and along with Melo still being on the team, Derrick Rose did not hesitate to quickly label them a super team. That's how confident he was in his new team. But before that season would even start, Rose's ex-girlfriend came out and made some shocking claims. She accused him of breaking into her LA home and, let's just say, took advantage of her while she was drunk. But the jury ultimately found the claim not credible, and Rose was able to move on from the situation and focus solely on basketball. But just the fact that he was even associated with such a horrible thing is bad luck in and of itself. Getting back to that season, the team that Rose once called a super team definitely didn't look like it, finishing as just the 12th seed in the East. In the 2017 offseason, he signed with the Cleveland Cavaliers, but wouldn't stay there very long. He was traded at the 2018 deadline, after putting up the worst numbers of his career up until that point, as the Jazz immediately waived him. Now sure, there has been a few flashes of greatness here and there, like when he dropped 50 points as a member of the Minnesota Timberwolves back in 2018, and has been a major contributor coming off the bench for New York as of recently, but overall, it always seemed like the man could never catch a break. He just wasn't able to play like his old self again ever since that fateful day back in 2012. Alright guys, I know there are plenty more unlucky players/franchises that could have been in this video, so don't hesitate to comment them down below. And of course, don't be afraid to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.